With companies like Sega and Konami leaving so many of their properties unreleased and without updates on modern machines, it can be frustrating to be a fan of retro games sometimes. This is particularly true because some of these franchises are considered the best of their generations and are beloved by millions. Lucky for us, we have some spiritual successors out there that have picked up the ball and continued the legacies of many of these games. While we haven't had a new Castlevania, Sega Rally, or Panzer Dragoon in quite some time, we do have some alternatives that can fill the void quite nicely. I've got some racing games, platformers, and even a pinball title for you here. I hope you guys enjoy modern games that play like the classics. In the summer of 2019, Castlevania series veteran Koji Igarashi joined forces with Artplay and 505 Games to release the crowd-funded Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. This was a 2.5D action adventure that was meant to be a continuation of Igarashi's ideas from previous Castlevania titles. No longer with Konami, he was forced to come up with a new story, a new name, and seek the help of fans to make it all happen. And happen it did, because Bloodstained here nailed the look, feel, and sound of Castlevania post-Symphony of the Night. You start the game as Miriam, a shard binder capable of taking the powers of her enemies and making them her own. You are trying to stop Bhall, a shard binder himself who has gone rogue and wants to bring about the end of humankind. You'll run, jump, and explore Bloodstained's beautiful world, growing more powerful with each enemy you kill and treasure you find. Much of the music here was done by the same composer that did Rocket Knight Adventures, Bloodlines, and many of the Metroidvanias, and sounds just incredible. This easily could have been called Castlevania Ritual of the Night, and you wouldn't have known the difference. It's available on all the major platforms and very much worth a look. You fans of the old-school action-oriented Castlevania games weren't left out in the cold. The year before, in 2008, Inti Creates released Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, an homage to Castlevania III Dracula's Curse. Much like that game, you get a side-scrolling 2D action platformer where you have multiple paths, multiple characters to play as, and some tough gameplay to overcome. While it does take inspiration from an 8-bit source, it's still an absolutely beautiful game visually. It has some lovely parallax scrolling, great animation, and again, the music sounds really good. The stage layouts encourage replayability and take advantage of each character's ability. In the absence of Konami doing anything with the series, this is a worthy substitute that is well worth the $10 it retails for. Again, it's available on every major platform. In early 2017, Fast RMX was released on the Nintendo Switch. If you were a fan of F-Zero or Wipeout back in the day, this is a fantastic mix of the two. The visual style is pure Wipeout, futuristic settings, and anti-gravity style hovercraft. The gameplay feels a lot more like the later F-Zero games, however, and makes for an interesting pairing of the two styles. It also happens to run and look nothing short of incredible, and was our first real proof that the old Switch had a little more horsepower under the hood than we may have first believed. It has a rocking soundtrack to race to, and there have been a few updates that have added additional modes like Time Attack and Courses. This is actually a sequel to Fast Racing Neo for the Nintendo Wii U, which itself was a sequel to Fast Racing League for the Wii. This one has a history of being a solid series, and if you like the feel of Nintendo's old school anti-gravity racers, it demands your attention. Micro Machines was a series of simple but fun racing titles that were spread across numerous platforms. Codemasters resurrected the style in late 2014 with Toybox Turbos. It doesn't have the Micro Machines license any longer, but it still has the same easy to pick up and play design. If you aren't familiar with these games, you are basically racing tiny vehicles in everyday environments in your home. The bedroom, the kitchen, the bathroom, and anywhere else you can think of to set up a racetrack. As you race and earn money, you can open up new vehicles, and each area ends in what amounts to a boss battle with things like hovercrafts and monster trucks. It's got multiplayer that is kid-friendly, and the 360 version works on the Xbox One. If you enjoyed these types of racing games on 8 and 16-bit systems of yesteryear, this one fits the bill nicely as a reminder of simpler times. Sega Rally saw an outstanding progression through multiple releases, but has been sidelined for years. The slack has been picked up by some great rally games since, and you won't find any better than Dirt 4. Similar to the tried and true fundamentals that Sega's racers were built on, this takes things even further by giving you loads of extra content, tons of tracks, and a visually impressive engine that looks just outstanding on modern hardware. In gameplay, this feels closer to Sega Rally Revo and Sega Rally 3, but you should feel at home no matter which game you prefer in the series. It has the same controlled chaos feeling that these games need to be special, and the modern improvements take it to the next level. It is quite simply my favorite rally racing game on the market that doesn't have Sega in its title, and is available on the Xbox One, PS4, PC, and even the Mac and Linux. I think Colin McRae would be proud to see where his influence led this great series of games.
Turn open, hairpin right. Post outside, 60. Post outside. Turn open, hairpin left. Right 6.
When it comes to run and gun shooters, there are few games in the same league as Contra Hard Corps and Contra 3 The Alien Wars. These two games combined make for some of the most thrilling gameplay the genre offers. Since the Contra franchise went to absolute shite in the following years, we have to look elsewhere for a similar fix. In the summer of 2019, that fix was completely satisfied with Blazing Chrome. This is nothing short of a love letter to those that grew up playing Contra, and is absolutely a winner. You get a few different heroes to choose, a story that involves the end of the world and you are its only hope, and of course it's got 2-player co-op for you and your family and friends. The 16-bit visuals are stunning and actually look and feel like something that is running on a Genesis or Super Nintendo. It also allows you to choose your starting stage and then the order in which you proceed. It's tough, but you have the weaponry and experience to overcome it. It's on the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Switch. Some of you may remember the Super Mario knockoff, the Great Giana Sisters, a platformer that saw some success and infamy on micro PCs like the C64 and Atari ST. A modern update to that franchise would see Giana Sisters Twisted Dreams come to a ton of platforms starting in 2012. This is a 2.5D action platformer that plays extremely similar to about a dozen other platformers on the market. You control Giana and must rescue your sister from the dream world. While most of the gameplay centers on running, jumping, and swimming, you have the unique ability to jump between worlds on the fly. The normal world has certain colored crystals that must be collected, as does the dream world. Each one of Giana's personas has powers such as dash and spin attacks that you'll need to use to get past certain obstacles. It has quite an easy pick up and play design that most people should appreciate, and definitely is something you can play with your kids. It's a nice looking game as well, and you can get it on all the modern platforms. Growing up, I was a fan of digital pinball games. Naxat made some excellent titles like Alien and Devil's Crush. If you enjoyed these games as well, then 2019's Demon's Tilt might be for you. It takes the themes and designs of some of those old games and brings them into a modern HD presentation. Also, like those games, it has an incredible soundtrack to it that just screams the Sega Genesis FM goodness. The boards are multiple screens high, the challenge is excellent, and it really does harken back to a time when digital pinball games were all about wacky themes and killer music. Even the funky physics feel like something on a 16-bit machine. I was a big fan of Sega's Enduro Racer and Stadium Cross arcade games. These had a great sense of speed and the jumps felt better than a lot of similar games in the genre. I was hoping Sega would revisit this type of game again on the Model 2 or 3, but they never really went in the same direction again. Looking for a simple game that had a similar feel, I was happy to find Motocross Madness on the Xbox 360 in 2013. While this one does capture the same great feeling of easily zipping around tracks and hitting major jumps, it also has a bunch of expanded features that really help in the replayability department. You can race your standard events, but there is also an open world element that includes collectibles and just letting you loose to explore and have fun. It isn't anything particularly impressive visually, but the gameplay is pure arcade with pick up and play mechanics that anybody can quickly get a hold of. It has multiplayer, is backwards compatible on the Xbox One, and can be gotten on sale at times for practically nothing. Launching on the Xbox One in late 2013 was Crimson Dragon. Since there had not been a new entry into the Panzer Dragoon series for a decade, I was quite excited to see this, especially since some of the people that had worked on Sega's trilogy were involved here. Reviews would have you believe that this is a bad game unworthy of your time, but I disagree. It is true that it doesn't play as well and the interface feels clunky, and the story is utterly forgettable, but it does move the rail shooting genre forward quite a few steps otherwise. First, there are numerous dragons you can get, each with different skills and additions you can use for your various needs. It also has 3-player co-op, a first for this type of game. It plays a bit different from the Panzer Dragoon games in terms of what does what on the controller, and the constant need to dodge becomes fatiguing to the point where it almost feels like it takes precedent over the shooting action. This makes some missions obscenely difficult to get through, not because you are being blown out of the sky, but because you just grow tired of playing them. Still, this isn't the terrible experience many claim, and while it doesn't hold a candle to the Panzer Dragoon games, it's a curious take on the rail shooter with some excellent modern options. Beware of the ludicrous microtransactions in it. You don't need them, and they are there purely as a pay-to-win mechanic. The nice thing about the modern climate of digital distribution in indie games is that there are many developers that want to make similar games to the ones they loved when they were a kid or working for another studio. This has led to a shed load of modern spiritual successors in just about every single genre. The few I've highlighted here is just the tip of the iceberg, and there are many more out there to be discovered. Sometimes they can be well hidden behind weird names or a platform exclusivity that gets them easily overlooked. The racing genre alone has seen a mini renaissance, bringing back the arcade-style gameplay in full force and picking up the torch once carried by the likes of Sega, Namco, and Midway. Hell, there are even some games out there that mix a bunch of your favorite retro titles into one big celebration of everything you loved on 8 and 16-bit systems. These games just don't play like your favorites, but can look and sound like them as well, making it a total package. If you'd like to see more of this kind of stuff, let me know down in the comments, and I'll see what I can do. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.